Hi, I'm Dr. Beck Bennett, and welcome back to the AIMER video series. This program was created for hearing care professionals like you and me who want to provide care that's clinically rigorous, emotionally attuned, and truly person-centered. If you're joining us for the first time, I'd encourage you to go back to video 1, where we introduce the AIMER framework and the thinking behind it. But if you've been walking through this series with us, then welcome back. I'm really glad you're here. In today's session, we're exploring what comes next. After we've asked, listened, and informed, after we've begun to understand what matters most to the client, this is where we begin to take those insights and gently shape them into action. We call this the manage phase of AIMER, and it begins with partnership. In the manage phase of AIMER, we move from recognizing what matters to working with the client to act on it. This is where the conversation becomes collaborative and where our role shifts from informing to supporting change. In this phase, clinicians do 3 core things. They help clients identify and set goals that reflect their real-life challenges and priorities. They guide shared decision-making, co-creating a plan that feels tailored, realistic, and relevant. And 3, they track progress, helping clients reflect, celebrate wins, and adjust as needed. So, let's begin with goal setting, because it's foundational to this phase of care. Goal setting is one of the most meaningful and yet misused clinical tools we have. When we invite a client to set goals, we're saying, your experience matters here. What you want and how you feel, that belongs in this appointment. Research shows that co-created goals turn insights into action. When a client shares something difficult, like frustration in social settings or feeling left out, goal setting helps us respond with clarity. It transforms that concern into something concrete and manageable, a step forward, a direction, something we can work on together. Co-created goals boost motivation and ownership. When goals reflect what the client actually cares about, not just what we can measure, clients are far more likely to stay engaged and committed to the plan. You'll hear it in their voice. This feels like me. It matters to my day-to-day life. And that's when motivation starts to rise. Co-created goals build shared understanding and trust. Setting goals together helps align expectations. It keeps things transparent and shows the client that you're listening and invested. We're not just ticking boxes. We're saying, I hear you. Let's work together on this. And finally, co-created goals improve outcomes while personalizing care. Goals that are clear and specific allow us to measure progress, adjust the plan when needed, and celebrate what's working. Co-created goals anchor the care experience in the client's real life. And in doing so, they help clients feel more in control. And for many people, hearing loss can feel like something that happened to them. Goal setting gently shifts that, giving them a voice, a direction, and a role in what happens next. Let's talk about 2 tools that you may already be using in the clinic. The COSI, that is the client-oriented scale of improvement, and the GPS, the goals for partner sharing. Both were designed to support individualized, person-centered care. But many of us were trained to use them in a very specific way. We were taught to hone in on the hearing goals, to find the clearest, most measurable listening situations, such as to hear the TV better, to follow one-on-one conversations at work, or to participate in my weekly sport group. Now look, these are valuable goals, but often they only capture part of the story, because underneath those hearing statements is something much deeper. Clients are often telling us that they're disconnected, or they're exhausted by effort, or they're afraid that they're losing touch with others and with themselves. But our training has taught us to tune that part out, to move quickly, stay efficient, look for the hearing in the story and leave the rest. But here's the thing, emotional and social impact is often why the client came to see us in the first place. When our client says hearing at dinner with friends is hard, what they often really mean is, I'm tired of feeling left out. I miss laughing with people. I'm afraid I don't belong anymore. So when we take a moment to truly listen, to document those well-being concerns as goals, and to build a care plan around them, the client feels seen, heard, and central to the process. And that is what holistic care looks like. So let's explore how COSI and GPS can help us do exactly that. When I look at the clinical data from hundreds of hearing clinics across Australia and across the world, we see that most of the goals recorded through COSI are really task-based. They're very hearing specific. For example, I want to hear better in meetings. I want to follow conversation in noisy places. I want to watch TV without turning it up so loud. And look, these are a great place to start. These situations are concrete, specific, and clinically useful, but as we know, they don't always tell the whole story. And they're not really motivating goals for the client, or as motivating as a goal that paints the full picture. The beauty of COSI is we don't have to change the tool, just how we use it. Often, clients are already telling us about their emotional experience. They're sharing stories of frustration, fatigue, embarrassment, or disconnection. But if we're too focused on listening goals, we might miss it. Sometimes, all we need to do is truly listen and make space for those insights to be heard and acknowledged. Other times, clients may not feel ready or may not have the words, and that's when a gentle prompt can help. You might ask, would it help to include a goal about how this is affecting your confidence at work? Would you like to keep track of how you're feeling after these social situations, not just about how well you heard? We don't need to overhaul the whole process, just invite the whole person into the conversation. Because when we align COSI goals with the real lived experience of hearing loss, we don't just personalise care, we humanise it. Now, let's turn to another powerful tool that many clinicians are familiar with, the Goal Sharing for Partners, or GPS tool, developed by the IDA Institute. This tool is designed for use when clients attend appointments with a significant other, whether that's a partner, a family member, or a close friend. Together, they reflect on what's working, what's difficult, and what they want to work on together. And that simple act of reflection with both people in the room can be transformational. You see, it shifts the dynamic from his hearing or her problem to our communication and our connection. It invites the partner into the care process in a way that's structured, safe, and guided by shared goals. And like COSI, GPS can support more than just hearing goals. It can open up space for conversations about emotional fatigue, frustration, misunderstandings, or even relationship strain caused by communication breakdowns. And when these stories come forward, we're not only supporting hearing, we're helping people feel more understood, more supported, and less alone. Sometimes clients and partners are already describing these dynamics, the strain, the conflict, the quiet moments of disconnection. Other times, they may not have the language or the opportunity to say it clearly, and GPS gives them a way in. It gives you, as a clinician, a pathway to explore those shared goals in a way that feels practical and person-centered. Now, once a client has shared what matters to them, our next step is to work with them to design a plan that reflects those priorities in a way that's practical and meaningful. This isn't about telling the client what to do. It's about collaboration, And here's why that matters. Co-creating the rehabilitation plan builds ownership. Clients are far more likely to follow through on a plan they've had a hand in shaping because it reflects their reality, their needs, their language, and their pace. When the plan is built with them, they're not just complying, they're committing. Co-creating the rehabilitation plan deepens trust. When we invite the client into the planning process, we strengthen the relationship. It signals, you're not doing this alone, I'm in it with you. And that kind of trust is what makes the harder conversations possible later on. It's what keeps clients coming back when things get tough. And finally, co-creating the rehabilitation improves outcomes. It's true. Research shows that shared decision-making leads to greater satisfaction, stronger motivation, and better engagement with care, not just in the short term, but over time. Because when the plan is truly theirs, it becomes part of their life, not just a clinical recommendation. So let's take a look at 2 examples of shared decision-making tools that you might like to use or adapt for your own practice. The first one is a visual discussion aid developed in the USA, but grounded in research by Ariane Laplante-Levesque and her colleagues from the University of Queensland. It's designed to support an open, values-based conversation about the different intervention options available to help someone manage their hearing loss. You can see here that all the options are laid out on a single page. Things like hearing aids, assistive devices, group rehabilitation, skills training, cochlear implants, and even choosing to wait. This format helps clients step back and see the full landscape of possibilities, which can be really empowering. The idea is to work through each option together, discussing what's involved, what the likely benefits might be, and what might be challenging. There's an extra layer of detail underneath that gives more information about each option. For example, if someone's interested in hearing aids, there's a summary of what the fitting process involves, how long it might take to adapt, and how it could help. Clients can indicate which option they'd like to know more about or which ones they're considering, and that becomes the foundation of the rehabilitation plan. The second tool is specific to tinnitus care, and it takes a very similar approach. This one is from the British Tinnitus Association, and again, it uses an open grid format. Again, it's designed to support shared decision-making, offering clear, structured information on the different care pathways for tinnitus, like using sound-based strategies, trying talking therapies, or joining peer support groups. What's great about this format is that it invites clients to ask, what does this option actually involve? How does it help? Can I combine more than one approach? And most importantly, what feels right for me? It supports that shift from what should I do to what do I want to do given my goals and my values? Both of these tools are freely available. You can download them as they are or use them as a template to create your own. The format doesn't have to be fancy. What matters is that it opens up space for a real conversation where clients feel heard, informed, and in control of their own decisions. Let's talk a little bit about tracking wellbeing progress. Because when the goal is hearing well-being, our markers of progress must reflect that too. Tracking well-being progress reinforces momentum. Even small shifts, like feeling a bit less drained at the end of the day or joining one more social event, really matter. They build confidence. They help clients see that change is possible, even if slow. And when we reflect that back to our clients, it deepens engagement. As a clinician, you might observe and reflect back to your client something like, I've noticed you seem more hopeful about socializing again. That seems like a win. How did that feel? Tracking wellbeing progress allows course correction. So tracking helps us check in. not just on hearing, but on how clients are managing emotionally, socially, and practically. Maybe something that looked good on paper didn't quite land in real life. And that's okay. It gives us a chance to adapt together and keep the care plan aligned with what matters. And finally, tracking well-being progress strengthens reflection. Looking back on well-being goals encourages deeper self-awareness. Clients start to connect changes in their environment or routines with how they feel. They might start to say, I've been taking more breaks and I don't feel as overwhelmed or fatigued at the end of the day. Or they might say, since I've been using my hearing aids more consistently, I found it easier to join in conversations. I'm not holding back like I used to. This kind of reflection builds emotional insight and it empowers clients to keep growing, even between appointments. It's really important that as clinicians, we recognize these magical moments and we shine a light on them. We amplify them by reflecting what the client has said back to them and celebrating these micro wins with them. Because in holistic care, tracking isn't just about hearing aid use, it's about hearing experience. It's not just about what's measurable, it's about what's meaningful. So how can we track wellbeing progress in practice? Well, one helpful way is to use short validated surveys, tools designed specifically for audiology that capture changes in how clients feel, function, and engage over time. Here are a few examples you might consider, each one focusing on a slightly different aspect of hearing wellbeing. We have the EMPAC, the Empowerment in Audiology questionnaire, the subjective wellbeing of older adults with hearing loss. We have the SPARK, which focuses on how hearing loss affects someone's social participation, and also the revised hearing handicap inventory to better reflect emotional and social impacts. And finally, the revised hearing handicap inventory, updated by Casserly and team to better reflect emotional and social impacts today. Each of these tools gives us a slightly different lens, but they all help us move beyond just hearing thresholds and towards a fuller picture of how clients are doing in their everyday lives. You don't have to use them all, just the ones that align with your client's goals and your clinical approach. Because what gets measured gets noticed. And when we measure what matters, we make the wellbeing benefits of hearing care more visible. So, we've talked about why tracking wellbeing matters, and we've looked at a few tools you might use to do that. But how do we actually bring this into the room? How do we connect the dots between a listening difficulty, the way it's impacting someone's life, and a goal that feels meaningful and motivating? Let's walk through a worked example together. An example of how a traditional hearing goal can be expanded into something more meaningful, more relatable, and more emotionally anchored. Here's one way we might structure a well-being informed goal-setting conversation. This simple template helps us go beyond just identifying listening challenges and starts unpacking the social and emotional impact those challenges are having. It's not a form to complete for the client, it's a guide to use with them. Because when we break things down this way, we can see what the client really wants, what matters most, and what might actually help. Let's walk through an example together. One of the most common goals we hear in clinic is, I want to be able to hear at home. And often this shows up as a TV-related goal. But when we pause and invite a little more reflection, we can learn that this goal is often really about relationship strain. In this case, my client shared, my wife gets frustrated with me. He described a feeling of tension, of disconnection, and underneath the hearing issue is a relationship issue. So I asked, how big a problem is this for you? How often does it come up? And then we started designing a plan, not just for sound, but for support. And here's what the rehabilitation strategies included. Wearing hearing aids consistently, at home, not just when out and about. attending a group rehab session with his wife so that together they can learn about communication needs and communication skills. And 3, using a practical TV strategy. So wearing the hearing aids, but also muting the commercials so she doesn't get blasted by volume shifts. Can you see how this approach invites the client to acknowledge the real impact hearing loss is having on their relationship, and how it also empowers them to do something about it? This isn't just about solving a hearing problem. It's about restoring connection, reducing frustration, and helping clients feel in control of their everyday lives again. And it shows that hearing aids aren't a silver bullet. We still need to support consistent use, communication skills, and environmental management. It's about bringing all the pieces together in a plan that makes sense and makes a difference. I'd like to share a story with you from my own time in clinic. I once worked with a fellow who listed hear the TV more clearly as one of his main goals. He and his wife had frequent arguments about the TV volume, a story I'm sure many of you have heard before. So we trialled hearing aids, but weeks later he told me they still couldn't watch TV together. Now that might seem surprising, but after a gentle digging, it made perfect sense. He was only wearing his hearing aids outside the house. At home, where most of the communication happened between him and his wife, he wasn't wearing the hearing aids at all. His wife was still having to raise her voice, still repeating herself, still frustrated. And the hearing aids, well, they were sitting in a box when he was at home. He reserved their use for when socializing with others outside of the house. So we sat down and had a talk. We really talked about all the little breakdowns happening at home, the mismatched TV volumes, not hearing the doorbell, calling out from another room, the strain it was putting on their relationship. We weighed up the pros and cons of wearing hearing aids at home. And for the first time, he saw the bigger picture. He realized he had a role to play and that making a change, improving the quality of his marriage, was within his control. And I realized something too. If I had stayed zoomed in on the TV problem, I might have jumped straight to recommending a TV streamer or TV headset. But by zooming out, I was able to see the broader picture, the pattern of behaviors caused by the hearing loss degrading the relationship, and to help him see it too. And that's the power of goal setting in holistic hearing care. It gives us a framework to understand what's really going on and to work with the client, not just to fix a task, but to change their experience of hearing loss. Let's look at another example. This time, the stated goal was to hear better at tennis. Now, on the surface, that sounds like a good listening goal, maybe hearing on a court or catching the score. But when I took a moment to ask, what does that goal mean for you? The client clarified. It's not about hearing during the game, it's the conversations afterwards at the tennis club. He said, it's not about during the game, it's the conversation afterwards at the tennis club. I can't follow what people are saying, so I don't bother going, and I feel like I'm missing out. And that's where the real need became clear. This goal wasn't about hearing performance, it was about belonging, about participation, about not being left out. And once that was named, we could explore it more fully. Here's how it came together in the goal-setting framework. Hearing loss was impacting his ability to join in socially after the game. He rated it a medium problem and something that happened every week. And then we talked through strategies. His personalised rehabilitation plan included trialling hearing aids to give him better access to speech in background noise. But it also included choosing a better seat, sitting in the middle of the conversation group and with his back to the kitchen to reduce distractions and noise. It also included practicing a simple self-advocacy phrase. Sorry, I missed that. Can you say it again? Or I really want to follow. Can you help me stay with the group? Once again, this shows the value of zooming out. If we'd stopped at tennis, we might have focused on wind noise or hearing on the court. But by pausing and asking, Where do you most want to hear better? What does this mean for you socially? We uncovered something far more powerful. We uncovered a goal about inclusion and confidence and not missing out on moments of connection. And that's what many clients are looking for. When we respond to that, not only do we improve their listening outcomes, we show them that we understand the full picture. And that's what makes care feel truly person-centered. Now, fast forward a few months. You're seeing your client for a follow-up. They've had time with their hearing aids. They're reflecting on what's changed. This is where it gets really interesting. Because what we track is shaped by what we set out to achieve. If we only set hearing-based goals, then we'll hear hearing-based outcomes. I can hear the TV better. I can follow the tennis score more easily. And look, that's great. But ask yourself, do those kinds of stories inspire others to seek help? Do they spark curiosity about hearing care in the broader community? Probably not. Imagine this instead. We've set well-being inclusive goals. And so now our clients are saying, I've been wearing my hearing aids at home and things are much better between me and my wife. She's not so angry at me these days. Or, I feel more confident at tennis. I'm joining the conversation again. I'm not sitting on the sidelines anymore. Now, those are the kinds of stories people remember. Stories of reconnection, relief, and rediscovery. And when clients talk to their friends about their hearing care experience, they're not just talking about TV settings or speech clarity. Now they're sharing how your audiological services changed the way they show up in relationships, how they feel more like themselves again, how you, their clinician, helped them feel seen and supported. And that's the story of holistic hearing care. That's the story we want our clients to be telling. And it all starts with the kinds of goals we help them set, the action plans we lay out, and the outcomes we take time to reflect on together. So, speaking of reflection, let's take a moment to reflect now. What stood out to you in this video? How did it challenge or affirm the way you currently approach goal setting, action planning, or tracking outcomes? Grab your workbook or just pause and jot down one small shift you're ready to make and 3 steps you could take to bring that shift into practice. Because the goals we set shape the care we deliver. The outcomes we track shape the stories our clients tell. And those stories, they don't just help one person, they ripple outward, inspiring others and reflecting back what's possible in our profession. Reflection is where change begins, and action is where it takes root. Thanks for joining me today for AIMER video number 7, Co-Creating Care, Goals, Plans and Progress. This session has focused on co-creating care that's not just personal, but transformational. Care that goes beyond listening goals and into what really matters: connection, confidence, belonging. In our next session, AIMER video number 9, we'll explore the next layer of the manage phase. We'll dive into what clinicians can actually do to support clients' social and emotional well-being, how to offer support that's realistic, research-informed and within our scope, and how to make well-being part of care, not just a side conversation. Because setting a goal is just the beginning. What matters most is how we walk alongside our clients as they grow, adapt, and reconnect with the world around them. Thank you for making space for what matters, and I'll see you in the next video. Ciao.